Today we'll talk about Workbook 4A, Exercise 6. In the textbook, we're looking at page 15 and 16. And today we're going to continue talking about rounding. If we have the number 2,478 in the textbook, it tells us this is the number of students in a school, and we want to round the number of students off to the nearest 10. Well, we can think about that. 2,478 is between the numbers 2,470 and 2,480. Right smack in the middle is 2,475, and I know that 2,478 is on this side of 2,475. So rounded to the nearest 10, that number is 2,480. It's closer to 2,480 than it is to 2,470. Now that's kind of the long way to say it. We can also talk about the fact that 2,478 is 2,470 tens, or I'm sorry, 247 tens plus 8 ones. Now those 8 ones make you closer to the next 10 because you've passed your 240 tens, you've passed the 247 tens and gone 8 more than that, which means you're closer to 248 tens. So if you go back and think about all that we've done in place value, you can use the fact that that's 2,480 is the same thing as 248 tens to make rounding to tens more easy. Then it talks about rounding to the nearest hundred. Well, if we think about the same way, first let's draw it. 2,478 is more than 2,400. It's less than 2,500, so it would be between those two numbers. The right exact middle of that is 2,450, and we know that 2,478 is going to be on the right side of the halfway mark. So if we round that to the nearest hundred, it's 2,500. Now we don't round to the 10 and then round to the 100, we just start right off rounding to the 100. But remember, 2,478 is 24 hundreds plus 78 ones. 78 ones is a long way towards that next 100, so I could consider 24 hundreds 78 ones and just realize that's going to be 2,500 or 2,500. All right, so that's a good way to think about it. Then we get the problem number 5. Mr. Ritchie sold his car for $34,125. What if we wanted to state that number, but we wanted to round it to the nearest 100? Well, I like the way of thinking of it as this is 341 hundredths plus 25. You know that half of 100 is 50, so if I've only gone 25 past that, I'm going to be closer to the 341 hundredths. 341 hundredths is the same thing as 34,100. 342 hundredths is the same thing as 34,200. Right in the middle is 34,500. And we know that 34,125 is going to be on the left side. It's going to be between 34,100 and 34,500. So whether you draw it or you think about it in terms of how many hundreds and how many more do you have, when you round it to the nearest 100, you would say that he paid 341 hundredths or $34,100 when you round it to the nearest 100. So page 16 gives us some more problems to practice rounding to the nearest 100. There's a picture in the textbook that helps you to do that. So I'll let you look at the textbook for the picture. I'll talk about it in terms of just hundreds. This is 300 And in addition to that, there are 45. That means you're closer to 300 than 400. So rounding to the nearest hundred means it's going to be about 300. That's rounded to the nearest hundred. Remember, you've got to look at how many hundreds you have. In this case, I have 3,670 more. So I'm closer to 3,700 or 3,700 than I am to 3,600. 4,800 plus 50. All right, remember we need a rule for this one because 50 means it's exactly in the middle. If you want to go to the nearest, but you're exactly in the middle, what do? Well, the rule is that we go up. See, in math we like to have one answer for every problem. And so if there's a time when we can't figure out an answer, because it's not nearer to one than the other, then we have a rule, and the rule is if it's in the middle, you will always round up. Look at this next number, letter D. It's a 5-digit number. We have 270 hundreds and 50 more than that. Now stop and think a minute. If you add 50, you're right between 270 hundreds and 271 hundreds. Maybe now you can see why we spend a lot of time talking about place value. It helps us when we're thinking about these to think of 270 hundreds and 271 hundreds, and the fact that 270 hundreds or 270, saying it backwards, 27,050 is what I'm trying to say, is exactly halfway between, so we'll go ahead and round up and be 271 hundreds, also known as 27,100. I keep getting a little tongue-tied, but you can see, I hope, that 270 hundreds and 27,000 is the same thing, and so we're working off of based on the hundreds. Okay, one more on this page anyway. 42,629 is 426 hundreds plus 29. 29 is closer to 426 hundreds, so 42600, also known as 42,600, is the answer of rounding that one to the nearest hundred. Now, there's another page of practice with about 12 more problems that they give us, and I'm going to go ahead and go through those. You might pause the recording and write them down yourself and then check and see if you get them right or if it manages to trick you when you're trying to do it by yourself. So 300 plus 20 would round to be 300. 486 would round to be 500. 650, because of the rule that you always round up when you're in the middle, would round to be 700. 980 would round to be 1000, also known as 1,000. 2,915 would round to be 2,900. 3,075 would round to be 3,100. 4,308 would round to be 4,300. If you haven't already done these, maybe at least say it out loud before I write it so you can make sure you're thinking the right way. 5,150 would round to be 5,200. Ready? 5-digit numbers. 142,134 would round to be 142,100, also known as 14,200. 255,120 will round to be 255,100. 324,150 would round to be 320 500. And finally, 520 hundred and 90 would round to be 52100 or 52,100. Now, if you have not done Singapore Math for a while, as in Singapore Math, Primary Math 3 and 2 and 1, you may not have done as much practice with the 100 values, but earlier in 4A, we started off talking about all of the place values, and you could go back and review some in one of the earlier recordings, I believe recording 1 of this semester. I talked all about hundreds and the values of this and kind of refreshed that, but this is a time when it really helps to think about numbers in terms of the place values. It makes rounding much, much simpler. All right, so that is all you need to know to be able to do the next exercise. And so exercise 6 is waiting for you.